does this to me every time. He knows he's going to trip me up in the open, and he does it. Welcome again, Steve Carlton.
And it's fun every time. I can't help it.
First Vice President, Johnny Montgomery Scott. We have a nice mix for you today of some global news, some headlines, some local news, and even a tinge of humor.
I try.
Would that be
I try.
the case? I started this week by saying to Steve that a word I keep hearing in terms of corporations and in terms of taxes is the word corporate inversions. And I had to look it up, and I thought for the benefit of our viewers and my benefit, what are they talking about corporate inversion?
You know, this is a phenomenon that U.S. corporations have looked at our high corporate tax rate, and they've found an opportunity to merge with an outside foreign company. And so the most recent example is the Burger King Tim Hortons merger. And so Tim Hortons in Canada, the donut coffee shop, Burger King are famous for hamburgers. They merge with the Tim Hortons unit, and it negates some of the tax consequences that Burger King has traditionally had to pay. There's a lot of pushback and a lot of people upset about it because even though a corporation is responsible to shareholders, there's an element that says, should U.S. corporations who have benefited and grown and become these major mega corporations, do they have any loyalty or obligation?
Responsibility.
And responsibility. Sure. And so that's the phenomenon. How big they're and how much this is going to happen really depends on what Congress does.
Well, you know what? I was reading, this caught my attention this week a lot, Steve. And I started reading up on it, going online and seeing about it. And what you're right. So the Congress is going to take this up. Where I left off with it this morning was that Congress feels that they are going to pass some kind of legislation. There's this question of responsibility, there's this question of loyalty, and fairness. And what they were saying, though, is that they cannot make it retroactive, so that they will be looking at future relationships where they believe that an American corporation, in an effort to diminish its tax responsibility, would be looking to merge with other corporations overseas to do that, right? Even if they're not in the same category.
Yeah, and you know, there is a compromise to this. You know, our corporations are competing globally. Our corporations are not just sheltered in the U.S.
Right.
And so our tax rate, we have to be competitive globally. If Canada has a lower tax rate for corporations and, you know, we're competing against countries in Asia.
Oh, that's a good point.
And so there is, you know, look at Apple, for example, all the sales globally that they do. They have these huge amounts of profits held offshore. The profits that they have in Europe and in Asia from selling the iPhones and their products, they would love to bring that money back to the U.S. But if they're going to have to pay a tax rate that's above what some of the other countries are offering, it creates an incentive or a disincentive for them to bring it back. And so they're legally looking for ways to minimize the tax burden. If Congress, if our political parties can collaborate and work together and find a compromise, these corporations then will find a reason to bring the money back home, reinvest, rebuild, and continue to grow.
Boy, right. A complex conversation for sure. Another thing, stock market just keeps moving around. Lost 100 points at the beginning of the week, regained 100 points, and again, another 200 or so point drop today. Somewhat fueled by global events. One in particular, the news that Russia might try to reciprocate for some of the sanctions that we're imposing on them by imposing sanctions back on us. Not a healthy scene.
It's funny that people didn't expect it to happen.
I know what you mean.
You know,
right.
here we're saying, okay, Russia, slap on the wrist for doing this.
Right.
We never really thought the other side might come back and say, okay, fine, here's the repercussions to American corporations.
You know, the one thing is that whenever the stock market moves like that, I always hear one of two words, and I really want your opinion as a professional on this. I hear the word, the market adjusted, or I hear there's a market correction. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're looking at it two different ways. They both could mean fluctuation, but there's more to it, right?
Well, you know, you could say, the way I look at it is it's a choice of words, but that choice of word comes from a perspective. Are you a person that says glass half full or glass half empty?
Okay. All right.
You know, if there's an adjustment versus a correction, adjustment is saying, this is just a normal movement, but we're going to continue to go higher. If this is a correction, we're now starting to move to the downside. But you know, when I look at the stock market, we're not at 10,000 on the Dow anymore. You know, we're just at 17,000 this week.
Right.
To have a 100 to 200 point move, from a percentage standpoint, is a very small move.
Well, you know, you hear frequently that The problem with any media reporting is that they do it by the number of points instead of the percentage.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about a percentage of dropping, it's like 1%.
Yeah.
You know, so something like that. I've heard that. I've heard this often.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at this and you say, okay, I know how you have at least mentioned things to me on the program about, you know, go slow and whatever. But the kind of caution you have to take, you know, correction always indicates to somebody something's wrong. You need to correct it. An adjustment, I totally agree with you. Oh, okay, so it's a little off, but we'll adjust it to make it right.
Yeah.
Isn't the overriding thought there not to get shaken by it or make any kind of knee jerk?
I'm just thinking about, you know what my dad would say to me growing up? He'd say, so what? What are you going to do about it? So people, you made a decision to invest, you had a plan and a strategy. Like somebody like Warren Buffett who bought a stock, you bought it, have the reasons for you buying it changed? The circumstances of the market going up and down in the short term, has that changed the fundamental reasons and purpose behind you investing?
So what you're saying here is really, why did you buy it?
Yeah. Why did you buy it?
Yeah, right. Great. That's great advice.
And if it moves 100 points either way, does that change the investment goal and the investment strategy? And I think all too often we become, so reactionary to these market movements that we lose sight of why we're investing. And we can have great companies and great strategy, but if we don't stick to them and we don't adjust based on what our goals are, we can lose track and really get into trouble. So put it in perspective. Yes, there are serious things going on in the market, but how does that affect your personal strategy?
And, and considering the lightning speed with which people buy and sell stocks because of the computer age, it's even more important that people do that. Why did I buy this? You bought it for a reason. Stick it out. In the long run, it's probably a lot better, given the fact that you'll always change your portfolio a bit, but given the fact, for opportunities, but given the fact that you stick with why you bought it, right? I think that's
great
fabulous
example.
Advice.
Great example.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about Alibaba. Came out, went up to 99,
right.
sold off, now went below 90. People are like, oh my God, do I sell and everything else? We'll go back to Facebook. Remember Facebook opened up and then it traded all the way down to $18, $19 a share. 3 months later, people are like, oh my God. But look at year out,
That's right.
Look where it is now. So you can lose sight of that and you can get caught up in the emotion. Try to take the emotion out of it. And that hopefully will help.
A couple of local things I want to hit on. We've been reporting on these things in the news. The Glens Falls Civic Center, they've got 2 bids up there. All this local news just seems to be north tonight. They still haven't decided between the 2 groups. The Coalition to Save It is at $600,000. A private enterprise is at $1.5 million. Seems like a no-brainer. A lot of issues concerning the health of the community are involved in this. EDC also, we announced that a new company is coming into Glens Falls Industrial Park. They're a beverage maker.
It's exciting stuff,
I like to see this kind of movement. Sagamore is staying open year-round.
Great sign.
Lake George Village has more and more businesses going to stay open. People think of Lake George as a summer destination. They're really going to work on making that a winter destination. All of those things are very healthy signs for us locally.
Expansion, the outlets that are coming into that area and everything else, they're really good encouraging signs.
Well, I just think it always takes hard work, right?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And of course, as you well know, more than all of us, it takes perseverance. So, well, great. Steve, thanks very much for coming in again.
Jesse. Yes.
We didn't get to the humorous ones. We ran out of time. But trust me, they'll hold till next week.
They will. They will. We got to come back and talk about it.
All right, Steve. Thanks very much.
Jesse.
See this interview again? Head to our website, looktvonline.com. Now let's take a look at what's happening in your neighborhood.